Chris Gongos, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
When did you join the TSO?
I started in the fall of 1998.
So it's been a while.
23 years now? Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Wow, but you're so young.
Thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. Tell us about your role as Associate Principal Horn.
So I play first horn. There are two first horns. Neil DeLand is the principal horn. I'm the associate principal. Generally, I play first halves of concerts. I do a lot of the concertos, overtures, the contemporary music, and most of the pops concerts as well.
Right. And generally in a horn section, there are how many of you?
We have 5. 2 firsts, 1 second, 1 third, 1 fourth.
Okay, so usually, well, I guess it depends on the repertoire, obviously, but the standard size would be like 4 horns?
Yeah, generally most composers wrote for either 2 or 4 horns.
I have to ask you something about the horn, because some people may be thinking, well, what are they talking about? Like, do they mean the French horn, which your instrument is often referred to as the French horn? Why is that?
You know, I think it's historical. It's known as the French horn probably to distinguish it from other generic horns. The Horn Society has officially said that we need to be called the horn. So
there is a governing body that has determined that it is the horn.
That's right.
Okay.
It's in the bylaws.
That's good to know. I didn't know that. I mean, I did, at some point notice that the French got dropped and it just started to be called the horn, but I did not know that there was an official call for that. That's kind of cool.
We still answer to all sorts of names and callings anyway.
I have to say, I have a bit of a bias as an inner voice instrument myself, but I've got a soft spot for the horn and for horn players. And I think you are generally known to be, the nice guys, the softies of the brass section. What do you make of that?
I wouldn't disagree. I think we tend to play with both the brass section and the wind section. So, we have to be very versatile when it comes to that.
Right, that's true. You're sort of flexible in terms of the timbral blend that you're looking for.
Exactly. Sometimes we have to be blasting with the loud brass, and other times we have to be blending with the quietest of woodwind parts.
Now, I don't know how much our listeners know about this, but my understanding is that the horn is notoriously difficult. Is that right?
It's no more difficult than any other instrument. Any instrument is difficult to master, but I would say the horn is a little bit more complicated.
How's that?
Well, I think the horn being such a long tube of metal with such a small mouthpiece, without getting too technical, we're often playing very high up on the harmonic series, which is the natural set of notes that we can achieve on the horn, meaning it's just a little bit more slippery than some of the other brass.
I see. So you have to thread a tight needle.
Exactly. Yes. And it's also a very large range. We've got a range of over 4 octaves.
And I guess that's one of the reasons for, specializing, high end, low end. I mean, in terms of first, second, third, fourth horn. Is that true? Like
yes,
a fourth horn
sure.
will develop different chops than the first horn?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, we all need to do our entire range, but I can say with complete certainty that my low register is not the same as Audrey Good's and Nick Hartman's. They can really do that low stuff incredibly well, whereas I just really have to focus on the high stuff because that's really most of my job.
Right. And I'm actually interested, too, to talk about practicing because, the stereotype of any classical musician is, practicing 6 hours a day and, that kind of thing. For brass instruments, you can't do that, can you?
No, you can't. I mean, you can for short periods of time. And certainly I remember being in school and practicing, 5-6 hours a day, if I had major things to learn or auditions coming up or things like that. But as a professional, I have to balance the amount of endurance I use in practice and in performance.
Yeah, what is it that is in danger if you overplay?
So the muscles of the embouchure, which is essentially the lips, they're very delicate muscles, and you can easily tire them out or strain them. So when I'm practicing, I'm balancing building those muscles while still maintaining flexibility and some sort of ease of production.
Right, so if you overdo it, I guess then what happens?
Well, what I lose when I overdo it is the fine control. I find I can't play quietly if I've played too much loud.
Okay. I'm going to ask you something that I'm asking everyone because I am convinced that every chair in the orchestra has a particular art that the audience and maybe even your colleagues aren't aware of. What is the secret art of your chair as associate principal horn?
The first thing is, what people might not realize is I have to be ready to play anything that the principal horn is supposed to play in case they get sick.
Oh, wow.
So that can be a bit daunting, but that's part of the job and part of the role. And it has happened, not often, but if Neil is unable to play, I'd have to step in and play it, oftentimes with no rehearsal.
That must add a particular kind of stress.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I think is a little special about the associate principal horn is, I spoke a little bit about the need for horns to play quietly and great security. And I think that's particularly true of the associate principal because mostly what I'm doing is playing concertos, new music, playing overtures. And that requires, I think, more than average attention to the high register and also of soft playing.
Right, because in a concerto particularly, you're usually playing underneath the soloist.
Underneath the soloist, exactly. Right. And so I think over, the almost quarter century that I've played with the symphony, I think I've developed that side of my playing. It's certainly very important to me, and that's what I practice a lot.
Well, it definitely shows, and we look forward to hearing those gifts again as soon as possible. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, and I look forward to being back as soon as possible as well.
Okay, take care.
Okay, thanks so much.